So here's a method I've been kind of toying with, hoping it'll sort of help move things along, because sometimes if I just read straight through from top to bottom, I can sort of feel like I'm just lost and I don't know where it's going to end. So I don't know if I should be taking all of this down or if I should be skipping ahead to... Anyway, so sometimes what I like to do is I'll skip ahead through the chapter and I'll just make headings out of these sort of bullet points. And then I'll go through the chapter and just sort of skim through and check out all the major like titles and headlines. And that way it just sort of gives me like a framework of what I can do, or of what like information I'm expected to get out of the text. Like for instance, these are all right there in the chapter outline right at the beginning. So I'll just get like key terms, stuff that I think are sort of major, what's the word I'm looking for? Major factors, I guess, in the chapter that I should really focus on obtaining, I guess. And I'll make these headings as well. And it's usually like big paragraph headings or keywords that are, bold, stuff like that. Just sort of main ideas. Plus it'll sort of give me an idea of how many paragraphs are in each idea, so I can make sure I'm skimming a little bit from each paragraph and getting the full scope. Socialization agents. Those are all sort of the main points in 6.1. And I'm doing all this on one line just so I don't have to highlight and click and change it to a heading. I want these all to be the same heading. So that's sort of the thought process behind typing it out that way. And also I think once I get through all these chapters and I have it all sort of like filled out, it gives me like a sense of like completeness. Like I've already finished the chapter once, and it just sort of, I don't know, maybe it just boosts the confidence or something, I don't know, but it seems to work. And also when I go back and read it again and read it in depth, recognizing terms sort of like validates what I'm learning, I guess. I don't know, I'll think about it and put it into better terms, I guess. So this is going to be mostly about polls. Public opinion is basically polls. The science of the poll, I guess. That's another thing too, while I'm skimming I can sort of put together my own ideas, and then when I go back and read them I'll be able to sort of compare and contrast, and if there's anything I already understand, I'll consider that like a victory, and anything I don't understand will be something I can learn. At least for government and probably like for law students and stuff like that, I do always make it a point to pay specific attention to names when they're brought up, especially when they're closer to titles, names of people, states, court cases. Those sort of things tend to have, significant meaning. Like here, Proposition 19 that legalized marijuana in California. That's probably going to be a significant piece of data that I should make sure that I, read thoroughly and take down in my notes. Push polls is probably a kind of poll, different than a general poll, I guess, and those are all the main talking points. Oops. See, so this way it feels like I'm already done already. I'm already halfway through, even though I'm obviously not. It's just kind of like sort of tricking my brain into thinking, oh, I'm already halfway there. I don't know. I think it'll work. It's a hypothesis. I wouldn't recommend it if you're desperate. But who knows? It might work. I'll let you know. You'll have to check back in. I don't know, I kind of like it. To that point about names and court cases and states and that sort of thing, I don't want to do all that right now. I just want to make sure it's important that I get the outline, the main basic ideas down, and then I go in it. So I do this in different stages. You notice I did the main chapter heads, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. Then I go in and fill in all the major sections of each chapter section, and then I'll go in basically the same way, and it's just sort of like a different way of processing it. Sometimes I also find it's nice to reword things and not just necessarily copy it word for word. Sort of change the meanings around. Sort of make it feel like it's my own thought. These are my notes. So, but an alternative thought to that would be though. This is also like a reference point if something ever comes up, like for instance about public opinion in political institutions, and I want to think where did I read that? I want to be able to know generally in the chapter where that is, and this helps if I keep at least a similar wording, at least the first word. I haven't been typing like this in a long time, so I'm very rusty. Should exit polls be banned? Be interested to read on that. So I'm also going to look through the key terms, see if there's anything that isn't sort of obvious, anything that I might have never heard of, and get the definition. So when I do see it in the context of paragraphs and stuff, I'll have something to go on. Interesting. And in this particular textbook, I'm not entirely sure if it's the same in other ones, but at the end there's also a summary of each of these sections, 6.1, 6.2, so you can get the sort of general idea. The problem with going off of this, though, is that most tests actually go back to the stuff I was telling you about earlier, about states and court cases and names and stuff like that. A lot of test questions have that stuff, so you still have to go back and get that, but it doesn't hurt to get the general idea, sort of, micromanaging. I don't know if that's the right term, micromanaging the chapter, just sort of dissecting it and just processing it differently, like eating dessert before you eat the rest of your meal. I don't know, it might work for some people, so we'll see. I am a little short on time, so I'm not going to do this per se, but there are review questions, sort of like a test. Even though I don't know most of the information yet, just getting an idea of some of the possibilities of answers, I don't know, it's just more information. It doesn't really hurt. Critical thinking questions sort of give you an idea of what you're supposed to come away with. It's just working backwards. And I think as long as you get it all done, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in. Although I wouldn't recommend getting too, abstract with the idea. Anyway, alright, there's chapter 7, so we can get started now. So now, 6.1, Nature of Public Opinion. It's going to cover socialization, ideologies, basically Republican, Democrat, central. So that's sort of the basic gist of what I'm about to read, and basically anything within that scope that seems important, names, dates, people, places, that sort of thing. I'm going to make sure I write it down. And I don't write it down just so I can go back and read it. The writing it down or the typing it actually helps me to remember it, you know, taking the time to spell the word, to craft the sentence, to, you know, to record the idea is going to improve how much of, you know, the information I retain. My sister, who's also a college student, we were discussing this note-taking and stuff, and she said it actually works better for her to write it down because it causes your brain to receive the information in multiple ways, you know, when you're writing it down versus typing it. And I would write it down, but I don't see very well. So it does raise some difficulties. Typing is just a little bit easier on me as far as speed, because if I spend too much time trying to read and stare at the screen, my eyes will get pretty painful. That's a whole other conversation. Okay, beginning of the chapter. And the introduction sometimes has some information as well, so you want to read that.